Hello, what's up, my Kniches? Here I am. I'm at my house. It's the weekend, but I'm going to record you a special episode of a Kniche presentation. Today we're looking at the HSC, we're looking at human resources, we're looking at the processes of human resources. These include acquisition, development, maintenance, separation. My inbuilt microphone's broken. I'm going to be gangster. I'm going to record using my iPhone. And there's a bit of product placement for you as well. I'll give that one to you for free, Mr. Apple. All right, what are the processes? The processes are acquisition, which involves identifying staff needs. It looks closely at recruitment, development, so this includes training and performance management. We've got maintenance, so we're looking at monetary and non-monetary benefits, and we're also looking at the legal responsibilities of employers. And then we're looking at separation, so that's voluntary and involuntary separation. It's involving the management, essentially managing the relationship between employer and employee. Businesses need to know how to effectively develop and retain talent, competent people, productive employees, employees who feel committed to the business, who are going to respond to change and positively to change, who will lead change, who will be change agents. It is in the business's best interest to work closely with employees throughout this process so they can help them ultimately achieve their strategic goals. All right, so before we get proper cranking, what we're going to do is look at the strategic links to these goals. So these were the goals that I was talking about just before. Firstly, the strategic plan is developed by management. They're the ones that set out what their performance objectives are, what their marketing objectives are, what their financial objectives are, how they would like to achieve them. And in order to do that, they then look at how they can best use their humans, so their human resources, in order to achieve those goals. And that is involved in this process. So these organizational needs are then translated into human resource strategies, which in turn dictate how processes are undertaken. So it's all linked, especially within this syllabus. This ultimately helps develop organizational culture, which we'll talk about soon. It's all coming from the top. Then that goes through to the monitoring of strategies. So in order to see if the humans in the business, so the employees in the business, are doing their job and achieving their objectives, they need to find out what the indicators are of if they're doing that. So that includes output, productivity, levels of service, the costs, the amount of warranties, because if there's more warranties, it means that there's probably something going wrong in the production phase of it, transformation especially. Is there labor disputes or workplace disputes? What is the labor turnover like? Are many people leaving? And the bit of the intangible is that working relationships. How well do people work with each other? Then that links ultimately to organizational outcomes. So is that achieving then the best profitability? Is it achieving high growth? And ultimately, are they competitive? Are they achieving a competitive advantage? So it's how a business can use its employees, tie it to the strategic goals, look at what the needs of the business are and match that to the culture of the business, how you can assess the effectiveness of those strategies and look at indicators like output, productivity, so on. And then is it achieving the goals? That's why it's a cycle, because then you can go back and you can look at, are you recruiting right? Are you training right? Are we having retention? It's all linked. All right, let's look first and foremost at our first part of that cycle, which is acquisition. Now, acquisition is closely related to recruitment and selection. Now, it's the process of identifying the need for a job. So what is the job that the business needs? What is the requirements of the position? What does the job holder need to have? What skills do they need to have? How is it going to be advertised? And how are we going to choose the most appropriate person? You might find it funny that I have retention up here. Now, I have this up here because recruitment is closely linked to retention, because you can afford to recruit the best in the respective field or market because people want to work for the company. So an example of this is Google. Now, Google has, and I'll be referring to Google throughout this, they have amazing ways in order to treat their employees as their most important resource, which in turn affects their productivity, It reduces the labor turnover. They look at their training. They look at a whole bunch of stuff. You can see here at Google Workplace where they're just chilling out. They're playing foosball. They're playing pool. This bloke has got a sick shirt on. He's definitely not spending his money right. And this is just one area that a breakout space it's called, where Google employees can work. Now, the most important part in the acquisition phase is being able to recruit employees with the correct skills for the job that can add value to a business. If they can't, why are you hiring them in the first place? Now, they should therefore be selected carefully, managed, trained, retained, just like any other resource. Now, a business may need to employ more workers for four main reasons. So, is there increased sales? Staff naturally leave, so through birth, death, moving away, whatever it might be. Staff get promoted, so people need to fill in the roles beneath that. Staff have temporary absence, so maternity leave. So these are the main reasons why employees leave. Now, effective employee recruitment and employee selection involves first evaluating and hiring the qualified job applicants. Now, you need to make sure, management needs to make sure that these people, their values and their goals are aligned with the business and its culture. So that's a big part in selecting that. Now, if you're hiring people that you want to be more down to earth, and they're going to rock up in a suit and tie and exhibiting maybe, I guess, emotions that aren't aligned with how you want your employees to be, then don't pick them. Now, acquisition needs to be fair, non-discriminatory, and legally compliant. So it needs to make sure that you're not being discriminatory, i.e. you're fair to black, white, yellow, red people, women, men, non-gender, whatever it might be. Now, smart businesses are using tools to identify gaps in the skills and recruiting strategically to fill these gaps. So it's not just hiring any person, it's hiring strategically to fill the gaps they need. This is then, it's called job analysis. It's determining the skills and the attributes that an employee would need to do the job effectively. Check out this website here, they've got a lot more info. All right, so through the acquisition phase, you think as a manager, you've hired the best person for the job. Next is then development. Now, development is concerned with improving employee skills and knowledge. It's making sure that they're continuously adapting. Raising employee skill levels, it helps improve productivity, and productivity is an increase in outputs using the same inputs in a given period of time. So for example, you might see here, we've got old mate with the same haircut as me. What a good looking bloke. He might stack 300 boxes in a day. Manual labor. If he's given a forklift, if he's trained appropriately in its use, he may start to then stack 1,000 boxes in a day. So therefore the productivity is an increase in 700 boxes. In the short term, it will be expensive. You might have to lease the forklift, train the employee in its use. However, in the long term, the cost will be reduced and profitability will increase because of this increase in productivity. One way of making sure that employees have these correct skills and they're maintaining their productivity is an effective induction program. And that's when somebody gets the job, how they're being taught the ways of the business. Now, Google has an extensive induction program and it uses a number of methods in order to make sure that people are supporting the desired culture of the business and achieving the same goals that management has set out. It's called The Life of an Engineer, and it's a presentation in the induction phase of Google, which focuses on daily operations. It looks at the expectations of employees. It then identifies people throughout the business who can be gone to for help, so who can be approached for help, so that a new employee doesn't feel like they're just having to do it all themselves. They've got someone to get in touch with. They actually have different blogs, online chat tools, emails. They have access to online training resources and a part of this mentoring program, so they're given somebody that will help them over time. And it's called a Googler support community. It's actually called a Noogler. So the new Googlers are called Noogler. There you go. On-the-job training is then completed through an introduction to tasks, and they're progressed in difficulty as the prior tasks are successfully finished. So they're not just being thrown into it, it's a stage-by-stage process. Now this links closely with training. Training programs refer to a systematic way. So it's done the same. It's done the same way. The same way that knowledge and skills will be taught to an employee. A typical training program involves these following things. So we've got a needs analysis. What do people need? What are the skills they need in order to do their job effectively? Instructional design. So it's setting the objectives for the training program. What are the skills? What are the knowledge? How are they going to be taught in order to institute that in the workplace? And the implementation. So on-the-job training, online instruction, instructional video, mentoring. What's going to work best in order to get your employees to fulfill their roles in the most realistic way? Now, you're probably looking at it and going, well, of course they will do training and induction, but businesses don't. It's time consuming. It's expensive. So sometimes they look at it and go, well, why would I want to do that? I'm assuming you want to improve your HSC band. You're like, yeah, hell yeah, I do. Now, you need to look at the impacts across the business in order to do this. So you can say, all right, well, development programs, of course we'll do that. But in the short term, there may be improvements in productivity and quality. However, there will be a big effect on liquidity. Now, liquidity refers to short-term debts being able to pay and closely linked to the cash flow within a business. So if there's a lot of cash going out in the short term for training, it isn't going to be realized, or the benefits of that won't be realized until the long term. However, that will be an increase in productivity and quality. As I said, training programs are expensive. They impact on cash reserves as they are developed and implemented. Long term, though, you'll get lower costs, therefore achieving cost effectiveness. Better quality, that's a performance objective. Higher revenues, improved profitability, and market share, that's a marketing objective. You see the linkage? It's crazy if implemented correctly. So we've got long-term and short-term, balancing our costs with our benefits. All right, so you've hired them, you've trained them, you've developed them, you're inducted them, you're going, yeah, what up, I'm sweet. Maintenance comes next. It's the process in order to retain staff and manage their well-being at work. Okay, it looks at health and safety, managing communications, complying with OH&S, industrial agreements, legal responsibilities. You'll see here, this is all encompassed in this flowchart. Now, maintenance involves a couple of things. There's communication and workplace culture. There needs to be proper channels of communication in order that businesses are really holding those staff. Now at Google, they have office layout. So this is an open environment here that encourages people to work together. One way that they do this actually is it's employee participation is giving 20% employee time. So that means Googlers are able to work on their own project for a percentage of their time, which will help their motivation at the work and increase their interest in wanting to stay at Google. Now, outside of the normal ways that businesses try to keep their employees, there are benefits that some offer. Once again, Google is big at it. They offer free gym, free haircuts within their staff rooms. There's massage, so people can come around and massage at their desks, healthcare, insurance, childcare, loans. They offer a whole lot to encourage their staff to remain motivated and stay at that business. Now, there's also legal compliance and corporate social responsibility. So businesses need to make sure they're making sure that they've got proper strategies in place to minimize sexual harassment, bullying, discrimination, as that can be really costly and it can destroy the business and individuals' lives. And that links closely to the separation phase, which we look at next. Now, ultimately, you don't want employees to leave, but it's going to occur, and it can occur through redundancy or retrenchment. So losing their jobs where they're not performing, it's no longer needed, lack of work, a fall in demand. An example of this, as alluded to before, is production line technology. So this is the old school Ford manufacturing process and today. So it's going to happen. Now, a big part about separation is that they may be dismissed for a number of reasons. An example is summary dismissal, which is an instant form of dismissal and usually associated with misconduct, theft, poor performance, whatever it might be. And look, I'd suggest you go to Fair Work Australia because selecting staff for dismissal can be risky. You can open yourself up for unfair dismissal and later you can be sued by employees. Now, I'd suggest you look at that in more detail yourself. And we'll talk about that in class as well because it's a big factor. Just about to run out of time. Sorry for rushing the last few slides. Kniche out. What up? Yeah.